Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
As I said on the first day of session, my top priority this year is to protect Marylanders. We knew this year would be different, and to achieve the goal would mean putting aside what we like to do in favor of what we have to do. No one up here wants to talk about cuts. No one wants to talk about revenues. But responsible governing means having the tough conversations. It means doing what is right, not just what is politically convenient. And over the past several weeks, the governor, the Senate president, and I all come to the table to do just that. The budget we are announcing today reflects our shared democratic values and strikes the right balance to face our fiscal challenges head on. We are making cuts. In fact, our budget includes $500 million in additional cuts to what the governor originally proposed. But as Donald Trump continues his assault on workers, healthcare, and our most vulnerable, we are preserving funding for state employee salaries, cancer research, victims of crime, and DDA. We are raising revenue. We are asking the wealthiest Marylanders to pay their fair share. We are putting our state in line with others like Texas, Washington, D.C., and Ohio by enacting a 3% fee on IT services. And as Donald Trump obsesses over cutting taxes for the top 1%, we are providing tax breaks to low and middle income Marylanders who will struggle the most under his administration. Let's be very clear. Donald Trump doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about Maryland. He doesn't care about the federal workers in Woodlawn, or the teachers in Howard County, or the farmers on the Eastern Shore, or the medical researchers in Montgomery County. He's out there every day disseminating our workforce and wrecking our economy. Donald Trump has shown us his values. Our budget, our Democratic budget, which invests in our workplace, in public education, in health care, and in transportation, reflects ours. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to my friend, Senate President Bill Ferguson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Governor, Madam Lieutenant Governor, and to the leaders behind me, the chairs of our fiscal committees in the House and the Senate. I'm deeply thankful for their work over these last 70 days. We are announcing today a significant framework for the state budget. Legislative leaders, along with the governor's office, have agreed to a state budget framework that strikes what I and all of us believe is the right balance between fiscal responsibility and protecting our core social safety net here in the state of Maryland. The Senate, House, and governor's teams have worked diligently over these last 70 days to put forward a budget framework that I strongly believe sets Maryland on the right path at this critical moment in time. With a potential storm looming from the federal government, we must rechart a new path for our great state that accounts for the chaos and uncertainty that we are seeing from D.C. every day. Getting here certainly has not been easy, as we don't have the full federal picture. But based on the last 2 months of the federal administration's slash and burn approach to governing, we do have a pretty good idea of what's coming later this year. The cost we may bear to the Trump administration's destruction is what I've been thinking about the most as we've had to make critical decisions on how best to balance our budget and, importantly, prepare for our future. Now, let me set a little bit of the economic picture here in Maryland. Right now, we currently rely on less than a third of our economy to provide 100% of our sales tax revenue. That no longer makes sense for our state. This budget framework includes important and responsive changes to tax policy, funding for education, and adjustments to state spending, changes that will have a net positive impact on Maryland residents and businesses alike. Let's dive into some of the key highlights. In order to achieve our revenue numbers, we had to consider many possibilities and proposals. And as we've moved through this legislative session, I have said many times that everything was on the table. Today, I want to announce that we have agreed to take a number of things off the table. We are not increasing the Maryland sales tax rate on goods. We are not adding a fee for deliveries. We are not increasing property taxes. We are not raising money from iGaming. We are not increasing the estate tax. We are not making changes to the car trade-in allowance. We are not imposing any new taxes on sugary drinks or snacks. We are not raising the gas tax. And when it comes to the sales and use tax, in broadening this growing part of our economy, we are not touching anything related to accounting, payroll, staffing, office support, employment services, consulting, design and printing, public relations and marketing, or financial services. So you must ask, what are we doing? 45 states across this country already tax services. We are modernizing our tax code, and in doing so, we likely will be the only state in the country to tax services at half the rate of our regular sales tax on goods. Instead of increasing Maryland's sales tax rate to 7%, we are expanding it in a targeted way. And we are doing this expansion of the sales tax because of what we saw from the Trump impact of the revenue write-down of $350 million to our state's economy. This budget introduces an expansion of revenues on data and IT services at half the rate of the current rate on goods. As our economy increasingly becomes digital, this revenue expansion acknowledges the growing role of IT in our daily lives and business operations, and the use of technology to replace workers. It also acknowledges that many goods, such as software programs, are now sold at yearly or monthly services. In fact, there's an entire industry that has been created avoiding the sales tax on goods. Some call it SaaS, or software as a service, which has become a modern-day good. Now, let's talk about the personal income adjustments. We are creating a high-income tax bracket, ensuring that the wealthiest Marylanders contribute their fair share. At the same time, we are pursuing an increase in the standard deduction that will provide much-needed tax relief to everyday Marylanders. This adjustment strikes the right balance. It ensures fairness while also supports working families. Another key change is an increase in the gaming and cannabis tax rates. Maryland is aligning these rates with our neighboring states, ensuring we remain competitive while generating an additional revenue for state programs. Additionally, the budget framework includes federal government spending triggers. This is really important. This provision is designed to protect Maryland residents from potential disenrollment because of federal changes. It ensures that those who rely on federal benefits are informed, prepared, and can advocate for their continued access to essential service regardless of what happens at the federal level. Finally, we must acknowledge the tough choices that come with responsible budgeting. Under this proposal, we are cutting at least $2.3 billion to navigate economic uncertainties and the unpredictable federal landscape in both cuts and reductions. While these cuts and reductions are difficult, they are necessary to maintain fiscal stability and ensure Maryland remains on solid financial ground. At its core, this budget aims to create a fairer tax system while ensuring that essential services like education, public safety, healthcare, and infrastructure remain funded. These decisions will shape our future, and it's crucial for Marylanders to continue to receive the high level of commitment that we know and expect to protect our most vulnerable residents in this uncertain time. Thank you very much, and the mic is yours, Mr. Governor.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. I am proud to announce that our administration has reached an agreement on a framework for the final budget with the Maryland House of Delegates and the Maryland State Senate. And to fully appreciate the significance of this moment here today, you have to remember the path that got us here in the first place. Because the budget that I introduced on January 15th came 5 days before the inauguration of President Donald Trump. And the thing that we have seen is that the world has fundamentally changed in just the past 8 weeks. According to the credit rating agency Moody, federal cuts pose a greater threat to Maryland than to any other state in the country. And we have seen thousands of federal employees laid off and offices nearly shuttered. The president has launched a reckless trade war with our allies, including our largest trade partners, and those tariffs could mean over a $2 billion impact on our economy and directly harm our people. We're talking about the poultry farmer in the Eastern Shore, who's now paying 25% more. We're talking about the dock worker in Baltimore, who now has less work because there's less cargo. We're talking about the restaurant owner in Western Maryland, who can't afford tomatoes or avocados or eggs, many of the basics that they rely on to keep their business going. And if we needed any more evidence that the Trump-Vance administration is a clear and present danger to our economy and to our people, just last week, President Trump announced his intention to cancel the FBI headquarters project in Prince George's County, Maryland. Maryland was selected as the best place for the FBI to meet its public safety mission. It's a project that would generate over $4 billion in economic activity for Marylanders. It's a project that would bring over 7,500 jobs. It's a project that was a decade in the making, and he canceled it via press conference without warning, without speaking to Congress, without speaking to us as a state, simply announcing that he would not go to Maryland because, as he called it, it is a liberal state. But while we've watched dysfunction and chaos from Washington, here in Annapolis, we've been working together. We will never compromise, ever, on protecting Marylanders against any threat, no matter who makes it. And that's exactly what this budget delivers. This is a product of days and weeks and months of partnership. And I'm proud to stand with Lieutenant Governor Miller. And I want to thank Speaker Jones and President Ferguson and their staffs. And I also want to take a moment to thank Chair Atterbury, Chair Barnes, and Chair Gazzoni for their outstanding work as well. Now, at the start of session, I laid out 3 principles that our budget needs to meet. The first is that we need to reform our tax code, and we will not do it on the backs of middle-class families. The second, we need to grow the economy, and we need to diversify our economy off of Washington, and we need to make Maryland more business-friendly. And the third, we need to and we will invest in our people. And I'm proud to report that our agreement hits all 3 of those targets. To grow our economy, we need to ensure that this is the best place to start and run and build a business. And we've agreed to invest in industries of the future that will grow Maryland's economy and create jobs like cyber and quantum and AI. And we will also protect incumbent industries and sectors that is at the heart of our larger prosperity, from our ports to our trade assets. And importantly, we need to diversify our economy because we can no longer count on Washington, D.C. to sustain our economic growth. Economic development investments in the final budget will go hand in hand with the legislation that we've introduced to grow the economy. We are streamlining state programs to make them more efficient and more effective. We are cutting red tape and reforming the procurement process to help our entrepreneurs build out their ideas and help them to bring them to scale. And we are transforming Maryland into a state that is unapologetically pro-business and unapologetically pro-growth, and not just in words, but also in deeds. Because of our emphasis on growth, our biggest framework will emphasize spending cuts over tax increases. to help us to close the budget gap. Together with the House and the Senate, we've agreed on a framework that includes at least an additional $500 million in targeted cuts on top of the cuts that our administration has already proposed. This is the largest amount that has been cut from a Maryland state budget in 16 years. This is what responsible governance looks like. I also want to thank the General Assembly for studying our income tax reform plan and refining it to ensure that we hit our goal of delivering tax relief to the middle class, because this was not negotiable. Under this agreement, now 94% of Marylanders will either get a tax cut or see no change in their income taxes. That is even more than was proposed in our initial proposal. 94% of Marylanders will either get a tax cut or see no change in their income taxes. For a third year in a row, there will be no increase in broad-based sales tax or state property tax. And yes, we are asking those of us who have done exceptionally well to pay slightly more, so we can have the best schools in the country, so we can support law enforcement and our firefighters, so we can make sure that we are growing our economy. We've spoken to Marylanders at all income levels about this plan, and there's consensus that if a person is making over $750,000 a year, it is reasonable to ask them to give roughly $1,800 more to help us invest in the success of our state. This budget agreement also includes a provision to add a 3% tax on IT and data services. Our plan reaches services offered by companies that will help you build your website, like Wix, and companies that help you to store information on the cloud, like Amazon Web Services. This will put us in line with other states already implementing these kinds of reforms, and by the way, both Democratic and Republican states, ranging from Texas to Washington, D.C. And this reform package will help us to bring our tax code into the 21st century. It means the majority of Marylanders can keep a little more in their pocket, even as we here in Annapolis tighten our belts. So the White House cuts taxes for the rich and burdens everyone else with high prices. Here in Maryland, we're showing there's another way. While President Trump and Elon Musk gut programs like Social Security and Medicaid, here in Maryland, we are showing there is a better way. And if you take away only 3 things about our plan, it should be this: we are providing key investments that grow and diversify our economy. Together, we are ensuring that 94% of Marylanders will get a tax cut or see no changes in their income taxes at all. And together, we are turning a $3+ billion deficit into a cash surplus, all while still preserving 8% in the rainy day fund, which, by the way, is above the recommended amount. This is what good governance looks like. This agreement is common sense, it is responsible, and it hits every requirement that we laid out at the start of session. If we said it, we meant it. And most importantly, it puts us on stable footing to move towards the future. Now, these are not simple decisions. Maryland needed to fix its business model. And I refuse to be a chief executive who simply watches problems get worse. We solve problems here, and we do not run away from them. We also needed to contend with the fact that Maryland no longer has a stable partner in Washington, and one who has our best interests at heart. So while there are many opinions about how we ended up in this crisis, let there be no question about who faced this crisis and didn't flinch. Because this team has met this moment of crisis with courage. This framework will inform the final budget, and the final bill that goes from the House to the Senate, and I look forward to signing it when it makes it to my desk. We know we have more work to do before sine die, but together, today, we celebrate a very important step forward in securing Maryland's long-term fiscal health. We now look forward to taking a few of your questions.
Governor, you said that this plan turns the deficit into a surplus. What is that surplus with this framework?
Well, we're still working through the final numbers, but the thing that we know is that when we came on board, not only did we have a $3+ billion structural deficit, which had been predicted literally since 2017, we knew that there was no way that we were just going to kick the can down the road. And so by making responsible investments and also responsible cuts, we know that we have addressed that situation of that structural deficit, and then when the bill is completed now, we'll not only work to be able to address that structural, turn to a structural surplus, but also right now this bill has a little over $300 million in a cash surplus that's already in the proposal as the final numbers are coming out.
There's deficits in the future, it looks like, coming up like Maryland. Will you raise taxes again next year, the year after? How will we approach that?
We're always going to make sure we're protecting Marylanders. And I've said before, I have a very, very high bar when it comes to how we're going to think about taxes. But I also know this, tax reform is incredibly important, and the tax reform that we are offering right now becomes incredibly important. It puts us along further lines with other states, as we mentioned before, but also what it does is it allows us to be able to say that we can have a responsible budgeting process when we're working together that helps to address the long-term needs and the hopes for the people of this state.
Setting aside the people who will have no impact on their tax bill, what percentage of Marylanders will see a tax cut under this plan, and what is the average cut that people can expect to see?
Yeah, so we're working through all the final details and the final numbers now, but the thing that we can say is that 94% of Marylanders will either see a tax cut or see no changes in their income tax at all.
Regarding data services tax, two questions. One, do you have an expectation for how much revenue it's supposed to bring in? And two, is it possible that tax could apply to people's cell phone bills, which obviously includes data services?
No, we're still working through all the final details right now, but the thing that we know was that we were not going to put the pressure, the additional financial pressure on middle-class families. That was something that became very important to us as we were working through it, and we've actually been working with a lot of the entities, especially even some of the entities who are going to have to pay a little bit more due to the data and IT attacks, and who also understand that as our economy has continued to evolve and as our economy has continued to change, that there is a need for people who are the main beneficiaries of that changing economy to be able to also pay a fair share.
Governor, there's been some discussion about making changes to the excise tax on car sales. Can you tell me if that made it into this final framework, and if so, what will be the new excise tax amount?
Yeah. So again, another detail that we're still working through. The thing that we know is, I think the Senate President actually highlighted some of those items before about what will not make it through. But we're still making the final details about which items specifically, when it comes to car trade-ins, did not make it in.
Hey guys, the governor will ask more questions, but we're going to turn it over to the chairs for a couple of questions right here.
That's fine. Chair Gizon, or Chair Barnes, you have the budget. You're voting it on in committee today. I know that there were questions about the funding for the DDA in fiscal year 2026. Have those been restored?
They have, and it's one of the points I think everyone here is most proud of. And I want to give a shout out to particularly Chair Gizon, who's worked on these issues for a decade. They are restored, working hand in hand with the community, the DDA community, and almost $150 million for 26, as well as the 25 restorations that we've already spoke about.
Chair, where does the blueprint stand right now? Are the custom community schools and the collaborative time still in? Where are we at?
As you probably well know, the blueprint is not part of this budget. It's a separate bill. We're going to continue negotiations on that bill as the days move forward. It's not part of the budget. It's funded.
Is the capital gains tax still a part of the proposal that was initially in the governor's?
It is, and we are looking to use the capital gains particularly for important investments in our transportation systems, as well as to help our structural balance. What we do know is that the Trump tax cuts that are focused on billionaires is likely to help those who have done the best. And so this is the right place for Maryland to look to have sustainable investment in our infrastructure and in our budget overall. We're still working through the details of we are keenly focused, every single person up here is keenly focused on doing whatever we can to lower utility bills, and we're leaving the possibility open that we can give immediate relief, and that will be worked out as the bills pass through each chamber.
Tuesday, you said that the blueprint was part of the larger budget conversation. If it's not part of this specific bill, where does it fit into this?
The Budget and Tax will be taking it up tomorrow from the Senate's version, but it's an ongoing conversation. We are looking at the long-term financial health of the state, and I feel confident that we're going to be in the right place.
Were decisions in this budget, does that impact your future plans?
Well, certainly investing the billions of dollars that we will be investing in public education is fundamental and critical, and why we had to balance and do it in a way that was sustainable and did not impact working families.
Any questions right here for Chair Atterbury, real quick, guys?
Actually, yeah, I'll vote for that. I'll mention about the blueprint. Chair Atterbury, you've been saying that pause is not pause, it's cuts. The word cuts has been used several times during here, and obviously you mentioned about the budget. Throughout what the House is proposing, are you hoping the Senate will come back and do what the House did with the blueprint?
So I think, first I want to thank the governor and his team, and I want to thank the presiding officers for reaching an agreement on the budget that was just announced and the revenues, because, that is tough decisions. These were all tough choices, and we were all elected to be here and to make the hard choices. And so I want to say thank you to all of them for coming together and working together. To your specific question, I'm just going to follow up and say the blueprint is part of ongoing negotiations. The Senate hasn't heard what we did yet. I think Chair Barnes and I have been pretty clear about where we stand and where the House stands in terms of the blueprint and protecting those that are most vulnerable, particularly those in community schools. So we'll see what the Senate does, and we'll link up with them and negotiate that in the days to come.
We got time for two more, General.
Chairwoman, does the budget include funding for thousands of settlements for potential child sex abuse victims? Yesterday, folks rallied in Baltimore. Where's the funding?
It does not.
How is the state going to take?
I'm going to take that.
It's still a product of very complex negotiations, settlement negotiations with victims, and so I think we are monitoring those settlement negotiations very closely.
We're going to go last question with Mackenzie right here.
When you talk about bringing taxes into line with the other states, anyone can answer if you'd like to. You talk about bringing it into line, but the question I would have for you is, what would separate you to make you attractive to businesses to come to Maryland if now it's on the level of every other state?
Well, I'd say the thing that would attract businesses to come to the state of Maryland is not just the fact that we have a tax code that is aligned with other states, because frankly, that's not how businesses are going to make their decisions. Businesses are going to make their decisions based on what state is creating the best climate for them. What state is doing things like procurement reforms and regulatory reforms and permitting reforms and making it easier for businesses to come and grow in the state of Maryland like we are doing here in the state of Maryland. What state is doing things like investing in education and making sure that you have an educated workforce and a strong pipeline like we are doing here in the state of Maryland? What state is making sure you're investing in transportation that's able to get people from where they live to where they work, like we are doing here in the state of Maryland? What state has the greatest ecosystem for the new industries and technologies of the future, like life sciences, like IT, like aerospace and defense, like we have here in the state of Maryland? And so not only does this package make it more competitive for business when you're looking at a taxation basis and coming up with incentives for business to be able to come and grow in Maryland, it's also about all the other things that Maryland offers. And it's the reason why we have had such great and productive conversations with business leaders all over the country who, if they're not already here, they know they are getting phone calls about coming to the state of Maryland. It's the reason that we just announced just recently that, looking at the most recent job numbers, that we have gained more jobs in this administration in 2 years than the last administration gained in 8. And that was driven by the private sector. So making Maryland more business friendly, making Maryland more economically competitive is not just the fact that this team and this coalition has been able to address things like tax reform, but it is also about are we doing the other things that's making Maryland more economically competitive, because we are unapologetically pro-business and we're unapologetic about the fact that growth is the only way to be able to solve our fiscal challenges, and that's exactly what we're going to do in the state of Maryland.
Mackenzie, last question right here.
Looking at, obviously you're saying that a lot of things are still part of the negotiations, that this is the framework. But if you are confident that there is $500 million more in cuts, can you share with the people at home what exactly the state government is planning to cut?
I mean, sure. I would say, the agreement includes at least this amount in cuts. He still has to go through all the committees and through each of our chambers. And so, these are at least, not 500 million.
We can
in addition.
provide, look, I think the best thing to do would be, I know this isn't the end of the discussion. You're going to see in an hour the House's version, and you'll see those cuts. It's a whole list of things.
Can you give us an example of one?
Vacancy reduction.
See it now.
Vacancy reduction is a great one.
All right, guys, thank you all so much.
Thanks. Go. Onwards.